The people that have made a big difference in the world, and all of your heroes in business, your heroes in culture, none of them knew what hung in the balance of their decision. And my friends, if you don't hear anything else I say in the next few minutes, you don't know what hangs in the balance either. But here's what I know about you because you're a leader. You do not want to look back and wonder what God might have done if only you had had the courage to step out. The first one is this. It's the courage to stay when it would be easier to leave. This is my dad's story. When I was in the 6th grade, we moved to Atlanta. My dad was the associate pastor of First Baptist Church of Atlanta. A couple years later, the people who kind of ran the church ran him off and put my dad in the pulpit and said, "You preach until we find somebody who can be the senior pastor of this church." That was their first mistake. Because my dad is a really good preacher. He's 85 years old. He preaches. He's still preaching. He's still the pastor of First Baptist Church of Atlanta, 85 years old, just celebrated his birthday. In fact, the other day, well, actually, it's been more than the other day, about a year ago, he called me. He was 84. He said, "Andy," he said, "you know what I would like?" I said, "What?" He said, "I would like to find a pastor who's just a little bit ahead of me so I could ask them some questions." I said, "Dad, there aren't any." Okay, if there are pastors ahead of you, they ain't pastoring anymore. You're the last man, oldest man standing, okay? I said, "But I am curious." I said, "If you were gonna ask a pastor who was a little bit ahead of you a question, what would you ask them?" And here's the question. This was not encouraging. He said, "I would ask them if it gets any easier." I'm like, that's not encouraging. A couple of years after we got to Atlanta, he was preaching, and they were the group that had run the church forever and ever. They were looking for a pastor. Meanwhile, my dad's preaching. The church starts growing. People start coming forward. We're baptizing people. The student ministry starts growing, and all of a sudden, the in control people got nervous because they knew they couldn't control my dad. And what began was a long series of meetings and deacons meetings. And at one point in a church business meeting on a Wednesday night, a guy I was sitting on the 3rd pew, slugged my dad in the jaw on the platform. Yeah, it was interesting. Nobody missed church back then. It was exciting, you know. Try to get a front row balcony seat, you know, to see what was going to happen next. And I remember, I was in the 8th grade. I still remember. We would gather as a family, the 4 of us, and kneel and pray because we knelt and prayed as a family around our little pecan little table there in our den. And I would hear my dad pray, "God, show us what to do, show us what to do." And here's what he would say. And if he were here, here's what he would tell you. He would say, "When I looked at the circumstances said go." When I would get on my knees and ask God, God would say, "You stay." When I would look at circumstances, they would say, "Run." When I would get on my knees, I knew God wanted me to stay. And when I've heard my dad tell this story, here's what I've heard him tell pastors for years and years and years. And this is for somebody here today. He would say this: if you run now, you may never stop running. If you run from God's will now, when are you going to stop running? And again, if an angel of the Lord had appeared to my dad and said, "Charles, just hang in there. One day your name will be known all over the world. You're going to write lots of books. You're going to be on radio, television, shortwave radio." In fact, there was a period in my dad's ministry, he was on every single day of the week in every single country of the world in radio, television, or through shortwave radio. I mean, that's quite amazing. But if he'd known the end of the story, that doesn't take courage. That just takes common sense. And the people that were trying to get rid of him, they assured him, "Hey, if you force us to have a church vote and we vote you out, there goes your career." And circumstances said go. God said stay. And some of you are in the middle of that kind of a tug of war right now. And you know in your heart you have no business going. And you know what else? You have no idea what hangs in the balance of your decision to stay. The second act of courage that will be a defining moment for many of you is this. It's finding the courage to leave when it would be easier to stay. This is my story. When I got out of seminary, I came to work for my dad. I worked for him for 10 years. I was a student pastor at the church I grew up in, and I had it made. I mean, after I was there a few years, my dad put me on television. He put me on the radio. I had a good income. I had ghostwritten some of his books, and the publishers got tired of me doing it because it took too long. So they threw me a book contract, said, "Go over there and write your own book," so they could find somebody else to help him do his. You know, so I mean, life was good. The church bought a piece of property. We had a second campus. They sent me out there. And I mean, it was like revival. It was like this was 23 years ago. And suddenly there were thousands of people showing up. We were turning people away in the parking lot. It was raw. It was real. I told Sandra after Sandra's here today, I told her after the first Sunday, I said, that's what I want to do the rest of my life. I told my dad, I want to work for you my whole life. I want to help you finish well. You just tell me what you need to do. Life was good. I mean, life was really good. Then my parents went through difficult divorce. And some of you have read Deep and Wide. If you haven't read Deep and Wide, at least read chapter 2. If you're a pastor raising a preacher's kid, or you are a preacher's kid who are thinking about working for your dad, you should read chapter 2. You don't have to buy the book. Just go up there and stand there and just read chapter 2, put it back. Don't tell him I said that. So I give all the gory details in chapter 2 of Deep and Wide. But the point is this. When Sandra and I looked at the circumstances said, are you kidding? You're even considering leaving? And then we would get on our knees and pray. And we were so stirred up because it was going to be so messy, because I was going to have to walk into this fabulous church that God had allowed us to be a part of and say, I'm leaving and I can't tell you why, and you can't come with us because we don't know where we're going. And Sandra's dad was so awesome. He would say, no, wait, let me get this right. So you're leaving one job and you don't have a job to go to? Yes, sir. He said, you realize my daughter, your wife, is pregnant? Yes, I've checked. And we'll be able to keep our insurance. But as it turned out, we didn't have any insurance. Nobody would insure me because the baby goes on with me. Nobody would insure her. Sandra has C-sections because she has scoliosis as a child and has a steel rod. It was tough, but we knew. And here's what happened. She got sick while she was pregnant and had to go to a neurologist, long story short. And as we were leaving, somebody had given me that book. Some of you have read Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. I grabbed that book off the shelf. It had been sitting up there for months and months, maybe a year. So, people give you books. You go, thank you so much. Not reading it, So I pulled that one off the shelf. And I'm sitting in the waiting room, as they're examining her and trying to figure out these headaches and this weird vision thing, and is it a tumor? And your mind goes in all those crazy places. And I'm reading. We finished with the doctor, went to eat lunch at Silver Spoon Cafe on Peachtree Street. It's gone now. Peachtree's still there, the restaurant's gone. And I got to this statement, and I don't have this kind of clarity much, but every once in a while, a little light shines through, and it's like the clarity is so clear. Now you're accountable for what you know. Now you're accountable for what God has nudged you to do. And here's what he wrote. He said, beginning empty-handed and alone frightens the best of men. It also speaks volumes of just how sure they are that God is with them. I read that out loud to Sandra. We looked at each other and we knew we have to go. Fast forward, we start North Point, got a building, got some land, I can't look over there. We're sitting in church one Sunday morning, and the way we do baptism, some of you do it this way, it's awesome. You have to do a video to get baptized in our church. We have to hear your story. And in fact, we have baptismals in all of our middle school environments because we baptize so many kids. And middle school kids, high school kids, they got to tell their story in front of their peer group, in order to be baptized. And we're sitting in church, and we heard this just particularly unbelievable story of this gentleman who just, and now he's being baptized. And Sandra turns to me and she says, what if we didn't leave? What if we didn't leave? What if we didn't leave? And now when we sit in church together and there's baptism, I promise you, we do not make eye contact because we can't. Because we think, what if we didn't leave? What if we had gone with the assurity, the comfort, the security, all the things that go with knowing you got a paycheck and you got an office and things are good and just don't look over there. What if we didn't leave? For some of you today, you're already hating this message because it's time for you to go. And do you know what hangs in the balance of your decision to go even though it would be easier to leave, to go even though it would be easier to stay? Do you know what hangs in the balance? No, you don't. And that's why it will require a single act of courage that may, in your case, in your city, in your church, in your culture, who knows, in the world, may be a catalyst for extraordinary.